Hello, my name is Glen Murphy. I'm from Pointe Claire, Quebec. My story starts with my great-great-grandfather, Edward Murphy, and his wife, Mary Leahy, and his two brothers decided to move to North America. They're originally from the Cools townland around Killarney, Ireland, and they were tenant farmers owning no land. And they immigrated to Canada, the present-day Canada, in 1856. So it was after the famine, but conditions in the Cools townland outside of Killarney were still pretty rough. I visited the area in 2014 and rode my bike in the Ring of Kerry around this area just to get a visual picture of the whole area, and found some remnants of old sod houses that were still in the area. It was quite interesting. Back to my story. So the family moved to Montreal. My direct family, that would be Edward Murphy, which is my great-grandfather, with two children, Patrick Murphy and Mary Leahy. Patrick Murphy would be my great-grandfather. He arrived in this area in 1856 as a 3-year-old with his parents, which were in their mid-30s. The parents with no marketable skills. Edward Murphy, my great-great-grandfather, worked as a laborer, and his mother and his wife stayed at home, which would be my great-great-grandmother. In this area, they lived on Richmond Street, and Patrick grew up in this neighborhood, getting married in 1878 in this church to Martha Donnelly. At the time, conditions were rough even in this neighborhood. There were cold water flats, there was no sanitation, and heating was minimal. And what was interesting is I found interesting in the family stories, and I confirmed it with the 1861 census. The families in these areas, they kept domestic livestock in this neighborhood. And our particular family had a cow and a valued of $18. I always found that interesting. The worldly possessions was a valued cow at $18 in those days. Due to sanitation problems, Patrick Murphy, when he married Martha Donnelly, they had their first two children, William and Leo. They died before the age of 10, which was Montreal at the time had the highest infant immortality rate, so it was pretty rough. Nevertheless, my own grandfather, which was the last child born to Martha Donnelly, and Patrick Murphy, was born in 1898, and his name was Henry Murphy. And so he grew up in this outside this neighborhood, eventually moving to other neighborhoods in Montreal, Western Montreal, NDG. And my own father was born there, and I'm still here. I grew up in Lachine, Quebec, and then moved to Pointe Claire, Quebec. I have 3 children now, Aaron Murphy, Shannon Murphy, and Liam Murphy. They're all in their 20s. Back to my own father, his name was Patrick Bryant Murphy. He died in 2016. My grandfather died in 1974. He was born in 1898. And original family members, Patrick Murphy and Martha Donnelly, they both died in 1926 on the same year. And in 2016, I recorded our entire family history in the Cotonage Cemetery, where all our family is concurrently buried, and that is my story. Thank you. In 2014, I fulfilled the lifelong ambition of finally returning to Ireland. I was the first person in my family to return to Ireland since the arrival of my family in Montreal in 1856. The purpose of my visit was for historical research and for cycling. I'm a long-distance cyclist, doing thousands of kilometers on a bike every year. So my interest was, of course, to fulfill this desire to cycle on my bike and to visit Ireland. I participated in the Ring of Kerry charity cycle in the year 2014. The charity cycle, it's almost a 200-kilometer bike ride around the Ring of Kerry, and it supports the local charities in Ireland. And there's about, at the time I did it, 10,000 participants. It was really interesting because this is where my family was originally from, in the Cools townlands of Ireland. And part of the cycling out of Killarney, as you start off the ride, you go counterclockwise on the Ring of Kerry Road, and you pass the Cools townlands. The Cools townlands our guest by bike about 20-25 kilometers outside of downtown Killarney, and you can see remnants of famine housing, old stone fences, parts of houses that are still standing but not inhabited, and various ruins. And it gives you a sense of the amount of people that lived in this area, and the primitive living conditions. Even up into the mid 1850s, the conditions were pretty primitive, and I suspect they hadn't really changed much in the last 100 years prior to that. Really, there was probably earthen floors and peat moss fires. A lot of peat moss was dug out to heat with, and thatched roofs and that, which had long since caved in. So just stone remnants of houses were left. But it was really interesting to see how you could go back in time and see this. And as you're on your bike, it's a great way to see it because you're not in a car, so you can, you're pedaling along and you run across these ruins, and it's just, you can feel the passage of time slip away as you see all this. So that's my story on the Ring of Kerry. It was a very interesting bike ride.